Greetings and salutations. This is Carla from MooreTalkJa, and welcome to More Talk Live. So, first of all, I want to welcome everybody who's listening on airtimes.com, everybody who's listening on Jamaicans.com, everybody who's listening on Caribcast. This week is going to be a little bit different, and I think this is a week that everybody who didn't know will come to realize that I am not actually a comedian, and my show is not actually a comedy show. Yeah, I tend to find the humor in everything, but I think in all instances there comes a time when things are really funny again, and we have to take a little ease off of the laughing and the joking and do something else. So a lot of stuff has been happening recently as it pertains to race and racism, and especially as it affects the black community. If you do a search on Twitter with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, you'll see a lot of stuff coming up. And so I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about what's happening, and I wanted to have a discussion about race and how what we know as race is kind of fake, but what we do with race, especially racism, is very real. And so I started to try to figure out ways to see if I could fit that inside of the way that the show usually works. You know, if there was a way that I could have this discussion in a typical More Talk format. So do I put the funny stuff before this, or do I put the funny stuff after? You know, do I take a little, use the funny stuff for rub out the taste or the discomfort out of people's mouth after, whatever. And the more that I worked on it, is the more I started to feel like it was wrong to do that. Like it was wrong for me to have this discussion and also to try to put it inside of a joke or put a joke right beside it. So I decided I wasn't going to do it. So originally this week, Martina Moore was going to come and we're going to talk about how to beg and all of that type of stuff. But none of that is actually going to happen this week because I don't think that this is the space for that. And also I feel that we should be deeply uncomfortable about what is happening. I feel that nobody should make a joke about this, and nobody should dull the blow of this, and nobody should make this more comfortable, because racism is something that is deeply troubling, and we should be deeply troubled by it, because sometimes it's not until you really get down to the nitty-gritty of how uncomfortable something is that you feel compelled to do something to change it. So I was talking to my friend Cooper about it. He's here, Cooper. Hi. And he said to me, Jon Stewart did it. And so I went and I watched that. So apparently Jon Stewart also cancelled all jokes yesterday and just stuck with what was real, which is the stuff that's going on in the black community right now. So I feel less bad doing it because Jon Stewart did it before me. So yeah, there's not really any jokes today. Today we're going to be discussing some stuff, but I'm hoping that you will stay with me despite the fact that there are no jokes, and that we can have this discussion. If you have something to say about this and I really wanted to talk to me about this, you can tweet me. My handle is More Mayhem, MooreMayhem on Twitter. You can also go on my Facebook MooreTalkJa page. If you are communicating, just use the hashtag MooreTalkLive, and it will make it easier for me to find it so I can get to the things that you say. Also, you can come over to airtimes.com right here and talk to me in the chat group, and we can talk about it. So despite the fact that I'm not making any jokes this week, I still need to use my disclaimer because I talk for myself as usual. So the disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed on More Talk Live are not representative of any companies, organizations, etc. with which Carla Moore is affiliated. AKA, nobody have up the station, no mother, no place of work, or anybody else for the sit them when I say, may I chat for myself. So, I was preparing this thing that I want to say about Black lives and how they matter. And I was really having a hard time with it, a harder time than I expected to have. And I just keep on a cry, and then I start get angry, and I couldn't get it out. And so I figured that if I try to come here and talk about it and just talk to you, reason with you about it, would I just start ball, and then wouldn't really get for ceremony if I say. So I say, you know what, I'm gonna script it. So I ask you to pardon me from not coming off of the cuff with this one, but this is exactly how I feel, and I literally wrote it how I think it. It's just that I thought it a couple hours ago as opposed to right now. So Um, as I sat up this morning preparing for this segment, I realized that I had no idea where to start. And I had no idea because where do you start a discussion that's been going on for years but seems so very new in this moment? Where do you start a discussion that you can't believe is still necessary after all of this time? And where do you start a discussion that you're actually terrified is just another flash in the pan and that you fear will go silent soon again, the way that it always does? Because it's not the first time that we started having a discussion about Black lives, but somewhere in the middle we get distracted and we stop thinking about it. It can feel so hopeless inside of Blackness and discussions of Blackness because it seems that it takes so much to make so little change. But like it or not, it's a discussion that we must have, because if we don't have it, then we willingly accept this very sorry state of affairs as a final answer. And I personally cannot accept that. I refuse to leave this world the way it is as my legacy to my children and my nieces and my nephews and whoever else. So unless you are asleep, you probably know it's been an interesting couple of weeks to be a Black person. First we had Rachel Dolezal or whatever, and she brought up the issue of being transracial, or rather the fact that race is a social construct as much as it is a biological thing, and that Blackness is something that you can perform. And most bizarre, that Blackness is something that you can choose to perform, because honestly, who would I choose to be Black in a world like this, right? That's the question they keep coming to with her. They're like, why do you choose to be Black? Why would you choose something that is basically suffering and pain, right? But obviously she sees something in a Blackness so other people don't see in a Blackness. So the issue of being transracial and how that actually forces us to query how true race as we understand it is. If a white woman could basically walk in the sun and get a good perm, and then we just accept her and be like, hey sister girl, how true is race? And this week, we have the shooting of 9 Black people at a church in South Carolina by a 21-year-old white man, the deportation and what people are referring to as the ethnic cleansing of Haitians from Dom Rape and the Bahamas, and the 15-year-old student that was killed at Maldon High in Jamaica, right? Which there's a lot of other people who were killed in Jamaica this week because, that's kind of how things go. So where do we even begin? And what do you look at when you're Black and when you're looking at Blackness? Because while all of this is happening, students are getting perfect scores in GSAT, and businesses are opening, and athletes are winning, and Black people are doing well in other regards. So what do you do? Are we depressing ourselves? Are we downplaying the good? And is our focus on the bad things more proof that we're still mentally enslaved and that we just refuse to get over slavery? Or are we just being real? The thing that we're not saying in all of this is that it's actually hard to love Blackness, right? Not because there's anything fundamentally wrong with Blackness, but because the idea of Blackness has been infused into many things that we find repulsive today. Blackness has been equated with poverty. It's been equated with a lack of intelligence. It's been equated with lawlessness, with loudness, and no idea how to function inside of proper company. Blackness is not whiteness. It's also not wealth. It's not success or happiness. So loving Blackness and retrieving Blackness from the garbage pail of the human experience where time has placed it is quite hard. And we as Black people also act out these mind games on ourselves and on each other. Loving Blackness is not a simple thing to do, because you basically have to recondition yourself from the ways that you were trained to hate Blackness in order to love it. So it's challenging, even if you're inside of a Black body. What is there to love about Blackness is the question. Our understanding of Blackness in this place begins with slavery, which is a very tricky starting point, because it's not actually a starting point, it's actually a plot twist. It's an interruption, right? The starting point for us is not slavery. And what did slavery teach us? That Blackness is something that you can buy, it's something you can sell, it's also something you can rape, it's something you can own. Slavery taught us that Blackness is something that you put to work for you. It fulfills your needs without any needs of its own. You put the slave to work and you don't even really need to see about their shelter or their food, because when one of them dies, you just get a next one. It's something you can discard, you can get rid of it when it's inconvenient. Blackness is squalor and it is filth and it's a burden to your system, even as it supports your whole system, because black people basically moved the Caribbean to where it was, to where it is today, through the work that they did on the plantation. But yet, the white planters who are benefiting for their labor were like, oh God, do we actually have to feed them and provide them with health care? How horrible, right? It's a problem. Blackness is a problem, but it can be useful if it's controlled by the right people. So now I know that a lot of people might want to step away from what I'm saying right now and be like, oh God, it's this other black apologist coming to tell us that slavery is the reason for the world's problems and that black people aren't responsible for themselves and rah, 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 rah. And if that's what you get from what I'm saying, then that's cool. And if you want to log off, that's also cool. But if that's all you heard, then you really weren't listening, because I'm not actually talking about that. I'm not here to blame slavery as slavery. I'm actually here to talk about oppression and profit and systems of control and how all of us function inside of them. And I'm also here to talk about training and learning and habits and how hard habits are to break and how difficult it is to change behavior, especially when everybody around you thinks and acts like you, right? So, all right, so step back from the issue of blackness and think about this. Think about yourself in relation to the people that raised you or who influenced you when you were growing up. Don't think about the things that you obviously disagree with, right? Because everybody gonna have something that the people with them they grow up with do with them not like, and you make up your mind and say you're definitely not gonna ever be them. Don't think about those things. Think about the other things that you just took for granted. That's how the world worked. It was just how things were for you. So perhaps it's like your family them wrap up the garbage in newspaper before them put it in the garbage pan versus throwing it in the garbage pan itself. Or do you wash your underwear and dry it in the bathroom, or you put it directly in the laundry basket? Or you go church or you don't go church? Or what methods do you use if a child is start crying, or if the pick me have hiccup? What you do? You put thread in them forehead, or you give them condensed milk for drink? Like, what do you do? These types of things that you take for granted. So everybody in your family does these things, so they're the norm. You never question them. But these things are not the norm. They are just what you were taught. And they became the norm because they were so common that you never actually questioned them. In fact, it was probably not until you saw somebody who is doing something different that you actually stopped to think that what you did wasn't as commonplace. And very likely your initial reaction was to judge the person who was doing the different thing and be like, what kind of foolishness that they were doing? So your first instinct was to decide that they were wrong. Now think about how many generations back these things that you're doing are coming from, right? So your granny, your great grandfather, if you're an immigrant of any kind, and most of us are immigrants of some kind, these things probably traveled across large bodies of water, or if it's Jamaica and Haiti, at least across a border with you, and they're still the same. Now think about the number of times that you have heard or used the term dirty nigger, or you found yourself saying or thinking, I saw black people tan. Them thief, them lie, them wicked, them love breed up and can't afford the baby, them too disgusting. Black people never go come to nothing because them love fight one another, them coming like crab in a barrel, etc., etc., etc. And some of these things are true. But they are not just true of black people, they are true of oppressed people all over the world. But rarely do we start a sentence about black people and it turns out to be good at the end. Like, rarely do we say, yeah, black people, yeah, they're very strong, they're intelligent, they're resilient, they're honest, them type of something there. Generally, when you start off with a black people tan, is a bad thing that you're saying. And how many times have you told or heard a black child being told that them worthless, them head tough, them are going to breed and not turn out to nothing, them are going to end up as gunman, them are going to end up in a jail, them come in just like them daddy, etc., etc., etc. And the question that I always come back to is, why is it so hard for us living inside of our own black bodies to think of ourselves as something good? Because we say these things about black people while we are standing here as black people and we don't actually recognize the things that we say. Yeah, them head nappy. See, somebody just fear gilly say, yeah, them head nappy and all them type of something there. Yeah, we head nappy, but why does nappy have to be a bad thing? So the question that I started thinking through is, when did you meet your black self? When did somebody start explaining to you what it means to be black? And who introduced you? Was it your grandmother, who probably came up in a world where embracing her blackness was a type of madness? where she probably did grow a afro, or your mother or your father did grow a afro, and everybody judge them and tell them say them crazy and what kind of something them a come with, because them not understand say broad nose and fluffy ear no cute. You need to try and make your nose small and cream out your hair. Was it the television who taught you what it meant to be a black person, where them kill off 7 people like you before the first 15 minutes of the show? The old joke, the black person is the first one to die in the TV show. Or who turned you into a gangbanger and a hook on the strip and didn't allow you to be anything else? Or was it the books that they gave you? The books that probably didn't have anybody who looked like you, or if they had somebody who looked like you could only be powerful in a world where everybody looked like you, because the second the little white girl appeared in the storybook, she became the girl with the power. As long as it's little black girls and little black girls can have power. But once the white girl come in, everything done. So who introduced you to your black self, and what did they know, and who taught it to them, right? I'm going to show you something that I think some of you may have seen before. I think it's something that a lot of people have seen, but every time I see it, it really strikes something for me. So I want to share it with you today, and it's a doll test. You probably know it. Where they put a bunch of children in a room and they give them a black doll and a white doll, and they ask them questions about the dolls. So this is the doll.
Which doll is the black doll? And which one is the white doll? Which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll is the bad doll? And why is that doll pretty?
Because she's white and he has 2 eyes.
Which doll is the ugly doll? Why is that doll ugly?
Because he's black.
Which doll looks most like you?
Like me.
Yeah, which one looks like you?
And that one.
Okay.
That doll.
So this is a test that they did many years ago, and that social scientists keep replicating every couple of years to see if anything has changed. And basically what they keep finding is that inevitably the black child will assume that bad characteristics, or assign bad characteristics to the black dolly, and assign good ones to the white dolly. So it's not just that they think the black one is bad, they think the white one is good as well. So who is it that taught these children that the black dolly was uglier, or it was worse, and that the white dolly was prettier or smarter or better? And the answer is that it's very likely nobody specifically who taught this child. Nobody sat down and said, you the black child are worse. Nobody sat down and said, oh, about that. Okay. Nobody sat down and said, oh, the black child is worse and whatever. But more generally, we're all involved in this act of teaching these children in terms of the things that we say, and also the expectations that we lay on them. We tell them, say, go away, your head tough and dry, go away, your head, your lip big and spread out, your nose take up half of your face, all of these things. Automatically, we're showing this child, you're not beautiful. You're not something that somebody should be desirous of looking at. When we look at these children and tell them, you're going to turn out worthless just like your papa, the papa is very likely the strongest reference of male blackness that the child has in their life. But you have just told this child that this is somebody who is of no value. And yes, it's possible that the father is underperforming and not being what he's supposed to be. But what are you actually speaking into this child's life in terms of how they are allowed to understand blackness, and how they are allowed to understand themselves as a black person functioning in this world? The books build a context, but people make it. Okay, so some stuff is going on the chat line here. Somebody says the books for sure. Henry says the books for sure. Fair Gilly said the books are the culprit. Jason says that the books build a context, but the people make it action. The context is right. And I think I would agree with all of those things. The books build the context, but the people make it action. But I think in a way we don't actually draw a line between what is in those books and what we are acting out. In reality, actually everything is coming together to create the idea in this black child that they don't have any value. Because the book is showing you that you're exceptional. You cannot fit into a situation with people of other races and still have power or be important. We have to separate you and put you among people like yourself to be important. Or if it is a situation where there are a lot of people or involved, you probably might not be represented. And this is not specific to just black people, right? It happens to quote unquote minorities all over the place. So I started thinking about who told this black child that they were not valuable. And then the other thing that I started to think about is, well, what is the child seeing when they look at this doll, right? Surely they're seeing that the skin is darker, but there is something else, there is something bigger that is going on here that this child is looking at. Now, is what this child looking at, is this child, when they look at the black doll, seeing poverty? You know, are they seeing oppression? Are they seeing somebody who doesn't have money when everybody else around them has money? Is that what the black skin signifies? Does the black skin signify somebody whose daddy is in prison and can't come to PTA meetings while everybody else's daddy can come to PTA meeting? Does this black skin signify somebody's mommy who isn't pretty anymore because they have a drug habit and it's starting to show up on their skin, right? Is the black skin signifying somebody who can't read as well as the other kids because maybe they're not eating the way that they need to eat to actually capitalize on educational opportunities, or maybe they don't have the support that they need to have when they go home to help them to learn how to read? So it's not as simple as just the black skin. It's actually all of the other things that blackness has come to represent. So when the black child pushes the black doll away and says that is a bad thing, what more is the child saying to us about how we come to understand blackness in this day and age, right? So beyond that now, what happens in a world where the black thing is a problem, where the black thing is bad, where it has less value, where it's not as pretty, where it's not as smart? Do we have a hard time killing and expelling things that are problematic? We don't. Things that we find to be problematic, we have a legacy where we have been taught that you kill something to get it out of the way, and this is not something that is new. This is something that when the colonialists them did teach all type of things, Christianity and English and off wear certain type of clothes and whatever, that's also one of the things that they brought with them, is this idea that you kill something to get it out of the way. If it's a problem, you kill it and the problem no longer exists. So we don't have a hard time killing and expelling something that's problematic. Does the thing that is problematic need to be causing a problem in that moment, or does it need to just be problematic in principle for us to feel okay killing it and snuffing it out? You just need it to be problematic in principle. If we feel like something is generally bad, even if it is not causing a problem in this moment, in the back of our mind we have it said, this thing is a problem more generally, so we need to get rid of it. So you don't need to be anything other than black, since black is a bad thing, to justify violence against you. Because blackness, as we have been taught it, is fundamentally bad. And it's fundamentally something that we need to get rid of. And that's why, as much as we're trying to speak it into existence, black lives don't matter. They don't. They don't matter because we have yet to unsettle the trauma of being killable, of being saleable, of being rapeable, as being tradable, all of these types of things that we're taught in the plantation. We have yet to unsettle that trauma and to retrieve blackness from this, what I call this garbage plate, like this garbage pail of humanity, where we have put it. And this retrieval that I'm talking about, a lot of people are like, oh, you need to get over slavery, and oh, slavery done and re. Me not talk about say, all right, we need to go back on the plantation and retrieve it. I'm talking like 1 generation back, 2 generations back. You come from a Creole situation and you have an Indian grandmother, and the Indian grandmother have a pitney with a black man, and she loved that pitney there less than the other pitney them because the pitney part black. You come from a situation where you have a black woman and she have light skin, and she have 2 pitney, one for a light skin man and the dark skin one. She don't like the dark skin pitney. Me not talk 4, 5, 6 generations back. I'm talking last generation. We still have not managed to do this work of retrieving blackness from this place where we have hidden it, right? And this place where we have discarded it. So the scripts of blackness are still the same. It's just the staging that is different. And it's not just blackness. right? Because we're talking about indigeneity. Like indigenous peoples face these same issues where people don't think that they have any value. They think that they can kill them and rape them and use them. We're talking about gender, because women will also have a particular set of issues that they need to deal with because of the ways that they are different from men. You're talking about ability, because disabled people will also have another set of issues of people who are not willing to treat them as though they have any worth. So it's not just blackness, but what we're actually dealing with is the trauma of oppression and persistent oppression. And these things, they play out over and over on our bodies and in our minds. They are played out on us, and we play them out upon each other, and the cycle just keep replicating itself, and we just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. But in a lot of times we're fighting each other. I mean, we use the term, oh, black people coming like crab in a barrel, that's why they can't get anywhere. And we don't think about how us even using that statement without thinking about it or saying something beyond that is the same crab in a barrel mentality. Yes, it might seem like a statement of fact, and in some ways it is true, but when you end the discussion there and you don't think about why black people do the things that they do, you too are contributing to the problem, right? So as we speak, Haitians are being kicked out of Dom Rep and Bahamas, because of issues with sovereignty and issues with, who is legal and who is supposed to be in the country and stuff like that. And I remember once I watched this documentary called The Price of Sugar, that if you have a chance, you should really try to watch it. Where Haitians come in, they do the jobs that nobody wants to do, right? They take care of the children because you don't have time, and they do it for cheaper than everybody else. Them clean your toilet, them because you don't want to clean the toilet. And they build, they get the sugar, they make the sugar. And so in some instances, based on what I've seen, it's not just all hunky-dory, like, oh, them run up and down free and I do this work and I suck off the benefits. Like, you actually have people living in almost slavery-like conditions where they are living on the plantation. There's no freedom for them to leave the plantation. They're guarded by people with guns. They barely make any money. Whatever money they have to spend it at the commissary that's on the plantation, and everything there is at like an escalated price. You have kids inside of these areas who, there was one dude there, he was like 25, he had absolutely no papers, he belonged to no country because Dom Rep would not sign him up as somebody from the Dom Rep, and he had no links to Haiti whatsoever because he had been born and grown in Dom Rep. And it's not as simple as Haitians fleeing over the border and just kind of making it on their own. But powerful people who want the cheap labor send people to the border and they collect people and they move them here and they do the work, right? But now I guess things have kind of gone over and we have more people than we need, and so we need to start getting rid of people. And it's so easy to just violate certain basic human rights of these people and just send them back where they come from, right? Because black lives don't matter, black livelihoods don't matter. And of course it is more complicated than this, because you have to think about the economy and the country and the sovereignty. And once the US starts to step in and tell people you can't send them back because it's unfair, then Caribbean countries are going to be like, no, but you can't come and tell us what to do anymore, you imperialists, because for years we sit down and listen to it, now go on again. But you have a person living in your country, they're contributing towards your country, and when you're done with them and you've used them up and you've taken all you can for them and you're no longer comfortable with them being there, you just put them out like that. Why do we think that we can use people in this way and then get rid of them? And what is it that we fundamentally believe about people who are black / people who are poor / people who have no power that allows us to feel this way? All right, let's see, something is going on in the chat room here. Let's see, light on the subject, that's what me. However, there have been more years spent of slavery than years of emancipation. True. When we start talking about police action against black people ending in death, conservatives throw inner city violence back in our face, we have to expect that reaction, Jason, and then attack them where it hurts in the pockets. Okay, so we are talking about this, and some people are saying that we've actually lived fewer years of emancipation than years of slavery, so how is it that we could expect that we could have this issue done, because people are still trying to work through this trauma. And then also the issue of when it is that a community comes up and talks about police violence against black people, then they talk about inner city violence against black people, and basically they're doing it to themselves, so why should we make a big deal when the police do it? Let us all agree to read Why Nations Fall and to understand extractive institutions and the choices we have to make. Okay. Sean says education, knowledge is power. I think that when a person tries to throw gang violence at you as a natural reaction to why state violence is okay, then they're actually just proving the point more than taking away from it. Is that black people are killable. They are killable by black people. They are killable by the state. And because they are so killable, it will be okay, and somebody will really try to find a way to justify killing black people. Oh, they're killing themselves. They're killing each other, so we should kill them too. Why? What is the lack of self-love that is causing black people to do these things that they are doing? And why is it that we continue to justify the state exploiting those things by pointing fingers at what we are doing to each other instead of being focused on the healing work that we all need to do in our communities? I do not understand. So, last page. So, it doesn't matter that any of the Haitians were born in dumb rape, because it's hard to develop a feeling of kinship with blackness. Right? So for you as a black person who is not facing what the Haitian person is facing, it's difficult for you to try to see yourself as a kindred with them, because by doing that, you're actually taking on all of those parts of blackness that you don't want onto yourself. Right? The part of blackness that is very dark skinned, the part of blackness that is hungry, the part of blackness that has to run to a different country and clean toilets to survive, the part of blackness that has to beg to be included somewhere. When you are sitting down in your house or me in the office with the nice AC and them something there, and you're the level of blackness that's okay, society kind of accepts you as long as you don't step out of line, why would you want to go and associate yourself with that type of blackness and take that onto yourself and be like, that too is the truth about me? It's much easier for you to judge it. It's much easier for you to shun it. And in actually separating some parts of the black experience from you, you can make yourself feel more comfortable about being a black person, because at least you're not a nigger. Right? So we're so shocked by what people in the dumb rep are doing. There's no reason for us to be that shocked by what people in the dumb rep are doing. They are doing whatever they have to do to make themselves the type of black that is not Haitian black. And it's acceptable. So a white man, and I'm not going to say his name because I refuse to make this man any more of a celebrity that he is, because I know like right now they're probably doing crowdfunding stuff to try to get him off of this rap, the same thing they did with that idiot who murdered Trayvon. Went to worship with a church full of black folk, and he turned around and killed them, and he said it was because he wanted to start a race war. And as we speak, they are scouring this boy's record to look for mental illness, a history of mental illness, perhaps he was bullied, maybe he came from an unstable family background. When you and I both know that if this was a black boy who had actually been killed, then they would have gone into his room looking for, like, if he had a spliff tail, they would have gone into the room looking to see if he listened to rap music, did he ever, I don't know, post some Tupac lyrics on his Instagram, because in that way what we could prove is he was that type of black that was going to eventually become a gangbanger, and it makes more sense that we kill him now. So we get rid of him now before he can become a full-grown problem, because blackness is always a problem. And in Jamaica, a set of black children killed another black child in school over what I'm not sure. And he's really just another one on a long list of black children who are killed by black children. And so the community that the child was from came down to the school and attacked the vendor at the school who it's rumored gave the children the knives that were used in the attack. I haven't really confirmed this part, right? So they came down and attacked the vendor. And so it's like, where does the black death end? Right? A black person gets killed, and so you kill another black person, and then you kill 3 more black people, and all of these reprisals and these reprisals and these reprisals. And at what point do you start to think about why it is so easy for you to kill a black person? And I understand, listen, my grandfather was murdered, like gunpoint, them shot him up, gunman come in, them shot him down. So I understand the anger that comes up in you when something like this happens to you. But if I step back from that, and of course I've had space and time to be able to step back from it, at what point do you begin to query why it's so easy for you to just snuff out a black person, and how little do you value black life, and how little do you value your own? What is this? Mental health is not the problem. Okay, so Melanie says, let's talk about mental health. And Guest 932 said, it's mental health is not the problem, it is what the other side does to keep their side strong. And that's also partly true. The issues of mental health are relevant, and yes, you do want to be aware of, if somebody is not functioning in a way that they're expected to function. But also, how is it that we begin to look for excuses for the things that people do, so we don't have to flat out call them racist? Cognitive dissonance is a big part of blackness. Being able to divorce ourselves from a certain type of blackness is a survival tactic. It's not good, but it's how we keep from being a perpetual state of depression. Tiana Thomas says that. Yes, it is. There's actually a way that black people have to divorce themselves from certain parts of the black experience in order to survive. And it is very necessary to survive. But I think what has happened is that we have disassociated ourselves from certain parts of the black experience, but we haven't done anything to go and retrieve those people who cannot disassociate themselves from the black experience, from those parts of the black experience. So we have the privilege of being in this place, but they are still stuck there. And there's nowhere else that they can go. So when do we begin to do the activist work to actually stop that being a part of the black experience? Because we know that it's not useful and it's right. So what now after all of this? The world must come to terms with the trauma it inflicts upon black people daily. The world must come to terms with the trauma it inflicts upon all people daily. All people who are different. But what now? Black Lives Matter, in my opinion, is more than a rallying cry for the black community to stand against non-blacks. It is an important message for black folks to take into themselves. Your lives matter, our lives matter, your life matters. And it is a difficult thing to sit with. If you had to choose between saving yourself and somebody who was not like you, who would you save? And I don't mean you who have managed to retrieve yourself from niggerdom, where they tried to banish you, and who have decided that some of the things that they told you about yourself are not true. You, as they tried to teach you, you were. If you had to save that person, that nigger, would you save them? It's a hard question, right? And it's a difficult thing to kind of come to terms with. But I think that Black Lives Matter has to function on two levels. One, as something that the black community projects outwards to the rest of the world as a statement, but it also has to be a type of meditation that black people do inside of themselves, so that we can begin the process of loving ourselves, which is the only way that we'll be able to love each other, to collectively move out of the space that we're in. So can you love yourself? Can you love your black self? Can you stop seeing your body on the auction block? Can you stop selling yourself? Can you stop selling people who look like you? Right? Can you stop seeing yourself as dead on the floor? Can you stop killing yourself, and can you stop killing people who look like you? Can you stop lobbying to kill people who look like you? Can you stop screaming, yeah, the whole of them for dead, the dirty nigger them for dead? Can you stop saying that? Because please recognize that you are one slip away from being the same dirty nigger. So if you stop separating yourself from the full truth of the black experience, all ends right. The one them were there in the ivory towers and the one them were in the ghetto. If you stop separating yourself out like that, can you stop screaming that there are some black people who deserve to die because you're actually talking about yourself? Can you do that? Can you stop seeing yourself under the white plantation master who is raping you? Can you stop raping your black women? Can you stop selling them to other people to use them for sex? Can you stop presenting yourself as something that is only for sex? Can you see yourself as something sacred and something that is worth protecting? Like for people who actually believe in the spiritual, can you see the divine in the black body? Is there any way that you can see divinity in the black body? Can you find it in your body at all? Black Lives Matter must relocate itself within the black person and begin to separate the black person from the oppression inflicted upon the black body, because that's not all we are. To separate it from racism from the outside and racism against itself. Like, this is the last thing that I have to say on this. I'm going to go to the chat boards after this and then I'm going to wrap the show. But I'm doing this, and there is a part of me that is so afraid that this discussion is just going to come up and then end. You know? Like before. Like, or rather that we'll only keep this discussion as long as black people die. You know, because Black Lives Matter, we're rallying around black death. We're trying to stop black death, which is very important, because murdering black people has been a convenient way of getting rid of them for years. But I'm so terrified that this discussion will only continue as long as these instances of violence continue, and we'll actually still be trapped inside of this race war, and we won't be able to do this work that we need to take ourselves out of war mode to something else. You know what I'm saying? Loving Blackness for me is an act of political resistance. I have deliberately taken the decision to love blackness. Does it mean that I love everything about blackness? No. Does it mean that I justify everything that black people do and think it's okay? No. We're capable of messing up just as much as everybody else. But I took the decision that I am going to love blackness and try to retrieve the things that are associated with blackness from the garbage pail of humanity, because that is basically a method of me retrieving myself and learn how to separate the truth of who I am from the lies that they've told me. And so that's why, even though I'm afraid, I will continue to have this discussion, because somebody has to speak it. And I would love if you would talk to me, because I want to know what you have to say. That's my little spiel that I wrote up. I'm going to go to the chat boards now. Okay. Each of us must ask. So Fair Gilly says, each of us must ask ourselves, why are we here? And I think that's a really important question. I think if you can actually take that time to sit down and look at yourself and wonder what is your purpose here, you might be able to do a lot of internal work that's necessary to help you to combat what people tell you is your purpose here. But I find that a lot of time, especially in communities that are dealing with the aftermath of oppression, in communities that are everyday kind of focused on survival and getting around different types of isms that they face, they don't get that mental space to sit down and think about themselves, like, why are we here? What are we doing? You know, what is the purpose of my life? Because we're so focused on survival, and in a way there's a type of expansion of the mind that we don't get the privilege of having, which is not to say that we don't know how to think about ourselves. We think about ourselves and we understand ourselves, and there's a particular type of knowledge that only we will have, because sometimes when you have the privilege to just sit down and think about yourself all day, like you think too much and you end up in a strange place, right? But I think that I wish that there was more space that we had to do that type of reasoning and to come up with what is the meaning or the purpose of ourselves from our perspective, versus always having it be somebody in yoga pants with white skin who's coming to tell us the meaning of life. Namaste. So what is this? Fair Gilly, you need to answer now to justify your next action against this attack. Okay. Tiana says, I truly understand that Black Lives Matter as Black person involved, accepting that all Black lives matter, not just the respect to the ones. All of them. So yeah, there is a way that we draw this distinction between good, respectable, clean, non-sex having, non-weed smoking, non-weed selling black people, and then, you know, those other black people out there. And it's that those black people deserve to die because they're fundamentally a problem, and we don't think about the ways that these black people have come, or why they've come to be where they are, or also why our understanding of what respectable is, how our understanding of what respectable is shaped by whiteness, and actually don't have anything to do with fundamental respectability, right? So Melanie is saying black power. Black power. And Fair Gilly's understanding, there's a minority that is not well, but we're painted as mentally weak if we accept it and not the action. So there's actually an interesting discussion. You guys should come over to the Irie Times chat room. There's an interesting discussion that's going on about mental health and mental health issues in the black community, and how it is that some of the ways that we envision mental health as weakness stop us from addressing some of the mental health issues that we have. And I mean, if you look at what we think of as the typical Jamaican personality, especially the ghetto personality, it's post-traumatic stress. Like the way how them loud and the way how them react to things too excessive and them use violence. Like literally you're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, like the secondary things. Because you can't live in a place where people are just shut up one another all the time and don't feel like that is going to affect you. But then if we talk about these things and you say these things and we pathologize ghetto people, and then it becomes, oh, so the whole of them mentally ill. No, it's not that all of them are mentally ill. It's that this is another way of being human. This is yet another way of being human, and it's a legitimate way of being human because it's here. So if we spend less time trying to judge people for how they are and more time trying to understand how they are and how they came to be that way, if we stop thinking that this one human who was safe in their house and didn't experience crime or violence or poverty, if we stop thinking about that as the right way to be human, then I think we could really get further ahead. All right, let's see. Black power is black economy, which we are not addressing as a way that we should, which is actually an interesting way of thinking about it, is that black power, there is power in the economic aspect of it. And yes, I think in any type of resistance, especially within the capitalist economies that we are living in, we do need to include an economic aspect to it. But sometimes an overemphasis on the economic can also become problematic, because some people will use any means of getting money, and very often what you find is that unethical means of getting money play out on the bodies of minorities, which can become a problem in and of itself. We got your back, Carla. Have no fear. I don't have any fear because I know that I'm very well supported. There's no time to process trauma. We always get rushed into the forgiveness phase. We never get to process it. That Tiana is saying, which is actually quite interesting because I hear that the young man who went into the church and shot the 9 people, quite a couple of relatives of the people who were killed have gone to talk to him and they have forgiven him. And it's like there is this way where there is no time for you to have the rage, and if you do rage, then it becomes a riot and it's unruly black people, and then they don't know how to function and etc. So we move directly to the forgiveness, and I understand why we do it. Like there's a way that you want to show that you will not become the type of human that they are. You, the killing, hateful thing, I will not become you. So I will forgive you rather than become you. But yes, it also does push us very quickly into a mode of being that's not necessarily true to how we are. Because maybe we are not actually ready to forgive. Stay in the face, Tiana. If you're guilty, say you must stay in the face and don't rush into the forgiveness. Minority suppression, like the common cold, is one phenomenon in life that will never end because the benefit to others is too significant. It takes a life-changing revolution. Look at history. That is quite true. It's very difficult for people to change things that are beneficial to them, and oppression is generally beneficial to people. I mean, both race and gender are built up inside of a hierarchy. There's a reason that they exist. Then it's not just to differentiate and say, oh, you have one thing and me have one thing. It's to also assign meaning to those two things. Like, immediately just look past somebody with white skin and be like, oh, you're white. Oh, me black, and it never mean anything. It just means that, oh, your skin color different from mine. But the second that I say, oh, you're white and oh, I'm black, there's an entire world that comes up between us actually to separate us off, and a whole set of values that are assigned. So it's the social things that we do with difference that cause the most problem. And people, I mean, we like to differentiate and we like to assign value. And when you have one set of people who are always at the bottom, then it becomes a problem. All right, let's see. Slavery ended because someone felt differently and took action. So when mental slavery is going to end? I don't know when mental slavery is going to end. Somebody said when the discussion becomes more than just a half-hour TV show. That's true. The second that the discussion can become something more than a half-hour TV show, I think, is when slavery is going to end. But also when it can become more than a discussion, right? Which is a whole lot of Oprah. Like, I can't get into that this week as into whether it should be peaceful resistance or passive resistance. But you know what? And this is the final thing I'll say before I close out the show. The thing about being at war is that it doesn't leave you time for much else. If you are in a state of war, you don't really have time to build, right? It's what happened. I mean, it's how women got into the white women got into the world of work. The men were at war and nobody was there to do all the things that needed to be done, so they had to go in. But it doesn't leave you time to do much other things like growing, because you're so busy trying to kill something that you're not actually spending any time trying to grow something else. So going to a race war might seem like a good idea, but I don't know if a war is actually what we need. And I think that perhaps what we actually need is an uprising and some type of rebellion as opposed to a quote-unquote war. Because I think in an uprising or a rebellion, there's a level of consciousness raising that happens that doesn't happen inside of warfare. And I think that actually what we need right now is consciousness raising in all of our communities about the way that our lives matter. And yes, all lives matter, but we're talking about the black lives right now. The way that black lives matter, right? And I think this consciousness raising is particularly needed inside our black communities, for us to begin to love ourselves and to begin to take account of the ways that we treat ourselves and the ways that we treat each other. Like, when was the last time that you were just nice to yourself? When was the last time that you thought something nice about yourself? When was the last time you did something nice about yourself? Like, when was the last time that you looked at your black child with the black features and thought that child was beautiful, and then the little lighter picnic come past and you never have to shake your head and wonder, so for me, Black Lives Matter is an important thing to put to the world, but Black Lives Matter for me is also an equally important thing for me to take into myself, so that I can come to a point where I would choose to save myself. Not because I think less of anybody, but because I at least see myself equal and I see myself as something worth saving. And then ideally to get to a point where I don't actually need saving at all because I'm okay. So thank you everybody for sitting, for coming with me. Sean say for burn it down. You cannot take knives to a gunfight. That is true. That is true. The forgiveness thing is overrated. We should really always encourage victims. We shouldn't always encourage victims to tell their perpetrators they're sorry. Oh my lord, this is like, there are so many things. I think that we should reconvene this discussion at a later time, because you know I like to talk about race and those things. But we actually have another discussion that's coming up now. It's gonna be me and Dreamy and somebody else, and we're gonna talk about like a film festival and those types of things. But I don't want to leave without the more thought. The more thought is this: for once, just this week, spend more time looking at yourself than looking at people who are nothing like you. And don't take this to be an act of narcissism. Do not take it to be an act of being like hyper involvement with yourself. A lot of times we spend our time looking at people who are nothing like us and comparing ourselves to them, and then we lose the value of what we actually contain within ourselves. So just for this week, as a challenge, spend more time looking at yourself and people who are like you, either look like you or think like you or act like you, and see how many things you dislike about them because you dislike about yourself, and just take a little time to think about why you dislike those things. And if next week you find that you still dislike the same things or you can't feel differently about them, that's okay. But I've usually found that if I spend a week looking at these things, I'll usually manage to retrieve something about myself from the self-hatred pile that is very large in my life. So everybody, thank you for sharing with me. Thank you Nolly D and Harry and Cheese and Cool Park and Melanie and Cool Mama and who that Nolly D and Barrington and Farmer SP and Tiana. Yes, it's being recorded. I actually just need to figure out where to. I'm gonna upload them to my YouTube page. So yes, it's being recorded. So I will see you all next week. Be kind to each other, but most of all, be kind to yourselves. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Bye bye.